Greetings, this is Griff Ruby, the Nostalgia Catholic, with yet another Isaac Asimov short story review, although technically this would more accurately qualify as a novella, giving it a fairly substantial length. It gets the cover, and as you can see, Isaac Asimov's last and greatest Foundation novella. Okay, so, and yes, this artwork in front prepared by, and is credited here, cover art for The Consort by Jim Burns. Okay. Very tiny cover art for The Consort. And that is the name of the story, The Consort, page 238 by Isaac Asimov. 238, The Consort, Isaac Asimov. That is our Foundation novella, and the last one we published in a magazine. So let's take a look at 238. This is our opening pages for it. Now, this is artwork by Steve Cavallo, different person. He has a curious way of portraying Dors Venabilis, or Venabilis, or I can't figure out how to pronounce it. But anyway, there she is with a drink in her hand. You can see vaguely people in the background, like there's a party going on. And here in the foreground is a little girl asleep in a big, comfortable-looking chair. That is a scene from the story in which little Wanda Seldon, granddaughter of Hari Seldon, by Rach and Manella, by the way, when she's 8 years old. She is sleeping in this chair and dozing off, and while dozing off, she manages to hear is it a dream? Is it something you hear kind of half-conscious and you're not sure if you're dreaming or what? But it sounded like there was a couple people talking, grown-ups, guys. No idea who either of them are. No recognizable voices, apparently. And who are they? What are they talking about? But something about death, murder, and the phrase sticks in her mind, lemonade death. Well, she's 8 years old. There's going to be this really good lemonade with little drops put in the various cups based on the Mycogenian formula. So we're talking some pretty super lemonade here. Definitely something worth looking forward to. So the words in her head. But is that really what she heard? Well, let's read the blurb here before we get into the story itself. So, with the publication of Foundation in its May 1942 issue, astounding science fiction made history. This tale was the first in a series of stories that were published in that magazine. They would eventually make up the world-famous Foundation trilogy. We proudly, although sadly, bring this era to a close with the last original magazine publication of a Foundation story. The Consort is riveting and poignant. It, and two other tales, Forward the Foundation, which is in the November 1991 issue of Isaac Asimov's science fiction magazine, and Cleon the Emperor, which was in the April 1992 edition, form part of Forward the Foundation, the last Foundation novel. This book will be out soon from Doubleday, and this is the April 1993 issue of Isaac Asimov's science fiction magazine. That is correct. It is the last appearance, really, unless there's reprints that are done somewhere, any Asimov stories in a magazine. So, such appearances of any story at all began with Amazing Stories, March of 1939, with Marooned Off Vesta. It took till, as this one talked about, the May 1942 issue of Astounding Science Fiction before the first Foundation installment would make its appearance in magazine format. Now here, the April 1993 Isaac Asimov Science Fiction Magazine, Foundation makes its last appearance in the magazine format. It begins with a Encyclopedia Galactica quote once again, the 1020 Foundation Era edition, which is to say the 116th edition. Venabili Dors. The life of Hari Seldon is well encrusted with legend and uncertainty, so that little hope remains of ever obtaining a biography that can be thoroughly factual. Perhaps the most puzzling aspect of his life deals with his consort, Dors Venabili. There is no information concerning her whatever prior to arrival at Strealing University to become a member of the history faculty. It was shortly after that she met Seldon and remained his consort for 28 years. If anything, her life is more interlarded with legend than Seldon's is. There are quite unbelievable tales of her strength and speed, and she was widely spoken of, or perhaps whispered of, as the Tiger Woman. Still more puzzling than her coming, however, is her going, for after a certain time we hear of her no more, and there is no indication as to what happened. Her role as a historian is evidenced by her works on... That's it. Dash. So, yes, it starts with little Wanda. She's worried. There's going to be this party for her grandfather, Hari Seldon, who's turning 60. And when you're 8 years old, 60's pretty darn old. My goodness, does that mean you're going to die soon? You know? I don't know. As I make this review, I'm 65, so I'm already older than Seldon is in this story. Hopefully, I've got some more too. But at any rate, so she's worried about that. Seldon's able to reassure her, yes, it's old, and it'd be nice to be younger, but this is where it is. And on the other hand, I can look back on a lifetime full of accomplishments and, wonderful things to remember and think on and know about. And, I've seen a lot of really fascinating and worthwhile history take place. And I'm glad to have been around to see some of it, so much of what I've seen. So, but there's some interesting things that have gone on in the 10 years. Hari Seldon is now, has been, is no longer first minister. In the first one, we reach him becoming first minister as Demerzel leaves. In the second one, he loses his first minister role by resigning, a graceful way to get out and not have the military junta that took over, hurt him in some way. He resigns, he bows out, he makes a recommendation that, per what I know of psychohistory so far, which wasn't a whole lot yet, the military junta is just the thing this empire needs at this point. And they said, okay, so we have your blessing then. Oh yes, you do. But I'm going to resign. You don't really even need me there anymore either. And like, yeah, let's get him out of the way anyway. So yeah, fine, he's good. Gone. Bye-bye. He can live. And the Psychohistory Project continued to be developed. So, that being the case, Rach, okay, after his experience on that day and having his life saved by Manella, Dubaku, at any rate, Dubankla. Manella Dubankla. Wow. Try to say that 10 times real fast. Alright, he marries her. They're happy together. They have their little girl, Wanda. Apparently, there's also a younger sister, but we hear about that later on in the book and not in this story here. And they go off somewhere and we don't hear them again. Meanwhile, Venabili is worried about this story about the lemonade death that Wanda heard about. What is a lemonade death? What's happening? So she's wandering into different offices, trying to figure out what's going on. She talks with Hugo Amaral a couple of times. Apparently, maybe there's a plot to kill Seldon. That's what she's worried about. And she is hyper protective of Seldon. Just the whiff of the idea that somebody may be out to get Hari Seldon is enough to send her going, nuts, trying to protect him from anybody and everybody and watch over him very, very, very thoroughly. So, now, he didn't want any birthday party. He wanted to just be able to carry on, okay, bring a cake, eat a cake, let's get on with our, psychohistory. Instead, it's like everything is closed down. The computers are put away. Nothing happens for psychohistory. And turns out even the whole university is celebrating. Students are in massive numbers, are just spontaneously decorating places for this big Hari Seldon's 60th birthday. It's huge. And meanwhile, one of the members of the military junta has suddenly said he has summoned Hari Seldon. I want you to come here. Talk to me. Tell me about this psychohistory. Give me some reason that we should keep your little project on our national budget. Give me a reason. Can you do that? We have a new character on board our team, psychohistory team, besides Hugo Amaral. We have somebody named Tamwile Ilar. He is another mathematician, and as it turns out, a highly brilliant one. He develops these special equations, which he calls achaotic. I think probably would be more appropriate to call them dechaotic, because they're going to sort through a lot of chaotic situations and somehow reduce them to something that you can actually get that's identifiable. I.e., it takes what is chaotic and takes chaos out. That's what these achaotic equations really are. And it's like now you're beginning to actually get some conclusions, however faint, vague, and general, from psychohistory, and furthermore, things that you might not necessarily know merely by ordinary intuitions. You want to get to areas where you can start making predictions. So this character is undeniably brilliant. But it's also a question, Dors is running around suspicious of everybody, and she is questioning Mr. Ilar's loyalties. Brilliance isn't everything. It just isn't. I mean, you can have a very, very, very smart person, let's say, running your government, let's say, and he says, hey, I'm smart. I'm clever. I can use this position to make myself rich. It happens a lot. I'll leave that at that. So, all I'm saying is that smart is not the same thing. Loyalty, you really need both. So, she asked Hugo, what do you think about succession? Well, if anything happened to Seldon or he retired, I'd take over, of course. Oh, of course, yeah, right. But when it comes to Seldon, he asked Seldon at one point later on, if anything happened to you or you resigned, what would happen? Seldon, well, you take over for me, of course. I mean, that was never even a question. Of course you would. This assumes that Hugo Amaral will last longer. We will learn in the next section, not in this story, Hugo will not even be around when Seldon is 70. So he will not outlive Hari Seldon. But he was a young guy. He was a heat sinker that he had rescued from the unglamorous hind end of Trantor, which was the district of Dahl, D-A-H-L, where also Rach came from. But Rach was not a psychohistorian or a mathematician, just a street urchin who kind of was just grateful to Hari Seldon to bring him into a whole new and clearly much better life. Now, a rare wistful smile crossed Amaral's face. You and I. Do you remember when it really was you and I, just the two of us? I remember it very well, and don't think I don't miss those days. We didn't have much to work with, not even the prime radiant, let alone the electroclarifier. But those were happy days. Happy. Which brings up a couple things. We now have prime radiants. Actually, at least a couple of them plus apparently some other prototypes in various stages of work and experimentation. To say nothing of some component thereof called the electroclarifier, which I guess is something designed to make it so that it can store more equations and compress everything even more tightly into its small space. So it has all these psychohistorical equations. So Hari Seldon goes in to see the junta. Dors Venabili was not invited to come along, but the suggestion was made, well, let's all take rooms in this hotel right on the edge of the Imperial Gardens. A bunch of us, people of the project, we're just continuing the birthday celebration. It's like the last leg of it or something. But we're also kind of establishing a presence just to show we're here, we're supporting him, we're hoping he comes back alive. It's just that kind of subtle thing. It also provides her with an opportunity to slip through a door in that area that she has a key to. No one bothered to take it away, and she never used it again until this time. That enabled her to enter the gardens. So she gets in. I don't know if they ever figured out how she got in, but she gets in. She intimidates several junta officials and makes it clear nothing had better happen to Hari Seldon. Scares the crap out of them, but nothing was going to happen. They really just wanted to talk to him. What was the worst thing they could do? They pulled the plug on his thing and said, "You're on your own, mister." That was the worst thing they could do, or at least that they were seriously thinking to do. So she's still trying to protect him. But, it was safe. The conversation does have one interesting thing. He does kind of want to sabotage the military junta, and he comes up with this kind of nice thing. He starts talking about taxation. It gets more and more complicated. Just so many layers upon layers of this and that, loopholes and special clauses and precedents, and it's probably a whole college education just to be one of those tax preparers at H&R Block or wherever. You really got to know your stuff. There's tons of it. And then as if that isn't enough, every now and then, every year there's some changes. Sometimes the changes are very massive. And most of the time the changes make things more and more and more complicated. And it says, well, this complexity becomes a problem of its own if things could be simplified. And right away the junta guy says, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Well, we'll simplify it. We'll make it real simple. Well, we should study that. He's kind of trying to say we should study that. Give me a little bit of time to study this and tell you how exactly to do this to best possible effect. Oh, don't worry about it. I think we got what you want to do, and it's a good idea, and this will help us. It didn't. Pretty soon, they're toppled because they oversimplified. You got to take away a lot of regulations. In our life, we got a whole bunch of regulations. At least 90% of them serve absolutely no constructive purpose whatsoever. But there's still that remaining 10% or so which do. You've got to sort through them all one by one and suck out all the ones that are crap and carefully keep the ones that actually are of value and worth. But the junta just heard simplify, and he didn't stick around to get more details of that. Even though Seldon's trying to say you might want to consider, I'll be happy to prepare you some materials that'll help you think this through and so forth. But it's like, no, I'm not interested. Well, he succeeded. The junta is going to collapse. But although we won't see that happen here, the instability may barely begin. In fact, actually, at the very end of the story, there are riots. Hugo Emerald comes in. Hey, Seldon, all those riots you were predicting, they're happening. Now, just give that little tidbit from the end. So, Dors is suspicious. Now, she does have some reasons to be suspicious. She's still concerned about this conversation overheard by Wanda that Wanda was too little to really understand or report very accurately. There's also something that one of the military junta people had said that involved meaning that the person had seen the prime radiant in operation. That's a secret. It's totally, who's even supposed to know that there is a prime radiant, let alone what the thing looks like as all these equations come pouring out of it whenever you turn the thing on. And yet apparently one of these members of the junta had explained that in enough detail that apparently he'd seen it. So this is a very serious concern. Somebody in the whole psychohistory team has brought in this one guy from the military junta into their offices, showed him the prime radiance, and he said, well, all these equations spinning around in space and like this and that, doesn't impress me very much. Well, how come you know what they look like? So you begin to realize that maybe she's got something, but nobody's really paying attention. Seldon's trying to deal with this birthday thing, and okay, I guess I'm honored now. Okay, that's nice. But he really wants to get back to psychohistory and this whole strategy that he's applying, with the military junta, how that's all working out. Hugo just wants to keep working. We have some more picture. Now this is obviously from the picture you can see that has to be, again, another portrayal of Dors Venabili. Kind of a weird looking hairdo she's got, but okay. And this figure over here, I think, is probably one of the members of the military junta. He was describing it, and all those little geometric shapes. Well, how do you describe a bunch of totally unpredictable math equations? You just draw something up there. The artist, presumably, obviously the same one that did the first picture, the Steve Cavallo, had to do his best to kind of come up with it. So she also talks with somebody who's not a mathematician, but there's a little laboratory with somebody working there by the name of Cinda Monet. Maybe the lemon-aided death could be a layman-aided death. A layman would be somebody who's not a math whiz. Or it could be Elar Monet, which would be for the electroclarifier, the name of that. A death caused by something radiating from the prime radiant. I say, this can't hurt anybody. It may have aged Hugo Amaral, to a certain degree because he was around it a lot, and Seldon, not too much because he's got all this administrative stuff to do, so he's not around it as much. But supposedly it shouldn't have any effect. Maybe Hugo just aged faster because different people do. It's hard to tell. You never really know. But it has another effect that nobody was looking in on or thinking about. And as we get to the end, Dors has finally begun to piece together what's going on. And she decides to confront the bad guy. And I will not spoil the ending itself. But it's an awesome, scary, and I have to admit, tearjerker ending. It really is. It brings this little novella to an incredible climax. And once again, poor Hari Seldon doesn't know what to do. Anyway, that is that story, handled as an isolated novella apart from its place within the larger saga of the Foundation, or even just that larger part of it that's also contained in Forward the Foundation. Forward the Foundation, we're going to have another part and a short epilogue that will cover when Hari Seldon is 70 years old and Wanda Seldon is now, teenager. Yeah, well, mature age, 18. And other things are happening. That's not in the magazines. And just as I did not have a short story review of the psychohistorians from the very first Foundation volume, neither do I review that. With this, I've made my last review of individual Foundation installments as contained in the magazines. So, thanks for listening.